I decided to make a gluten-free and there's the dog scratching at the door. I'm gonna go let her in, little bitch.
Micromanja, courageous cooking in a crowd kitchen.
I am a bread baker. I love baking bread. I love eating bread. I love playing with the dough. I love stretching it. I love braiding it. I love making all sorts of bread with wheat. But one of the people in my life who I love dearly just was diagnosed with celiacs, and all of a sudden I have to start baking gluten-free, which, you know, these days there's a lot of great gluten-free flour blends on the market, but they all have potato starch in them, and I can't eat potatoes. Nightshade allergies. So I have to come up with my own gluten-free flour blend, and I have experimented. I'm gonna show you what I came up with. Making gluten-free flour is pretty simple. You just need a few things. I suggest a food scale because weighing by weight is much more accurate than weighing by volume. Then I put a bowl on the scale and a bag in the bowl because that helps keep it all nice and neat. Tear it out to 0, and then you can start blending. Now, all of the flours I use say gluten-free on them because I have someone with celiacs in my life. If you are just going gluten-free for a lifestyle choice, you can pick flours that don't necessarily have a certified gluten-free tag on them. I am gonna start with the brown rice flour, which is a lot of gluten-free flour blends. Brown rice flour is the flour of choice. And I need 156 grams. So, and everything gets measured into my bag, which keeps it all from getting up in my face and all over the counter. The next flour I add is sorghum flour, which is something that people have been cooking with for centuries, but we hardly ever use these days. But it's actually a wonderful flour that's great for sweet applications, for making cakes and pies and stuff like that. And I need 88 grams of sorghum flour. Let me tear my scale again. Tearing means you press the button and it goes back to 0. So you're starting from scratch. The commercial gluten-free flour blends that are out there all have some kind of starch in them, mostly potato starch. Again, I can't eat potato starch, so I'm gonna use cornstarch, and this one calls for 90 grams. So let's do that. I can't eat potatoes, so I got tapioca flour, which is a good substitute. And I need, let's see, 51 grams of tapioca. One of the most important ingredients in any gluten-free flour blend is some kind of binder. Xanthan gum is usually what's in gluten-free flour blends. You can also use guar gum. Some people also use psyllium husks. You need something that's going to give structure to the flour because without the wheat gluten in the flour, there's not enough structure. So this calls for 3 grams of xanthan gum, which is about a teaspoon. So I'm just gonna do it, tear my scale, and 3 grams. 1, 2, oops, put a little too much. And now we're actually ready to blend our blend. I can take these off. This is the magic of putting it in a zippy bag. You zip that bag closed. Make sure it's closed. If you did this in a bowl with a whisk, you'd be snorting your gluten-free flour. So this is my little experimental gluten-free flour blend. That's an all-purpose blend, good for all sorts of things. But if you wanted to experiment with different flours, you could swap out some of the brown rice flour for millet flour. You can use this as a base and then add another flour. Like I love using buckwheat flour, but I didn't put that in this blend because it's a very strong, flavorful flour. Flavorful flour. Woohoo! We've made our flour blend without potato starch. Now let's make something yummy with it. This is everything I need to make gluten-free vegan pumpkin bread. It's so good. I can't wait to share this with you. I've got eggs. True confessions, mea culpa. Eggs are not vegan. I am just so used to baking with eggs that I pulled them out and I put them in the batter and we shot me putting that batter together, but it's not vegan. Eggs are an animal product, so just make it without the eggs and then you'll have vegan bread. Sorry. Oil. There is cider vinegar, vanilla. This is my pumpkin pureed, my own, but you can use canned. This is, I know this is coconut milk. Look how thick and creamy it is. This was in the fridge, which is why it's so solid. And then I have my dry ingredients. I've got my gluten-free flour blend. I added oat bran to this because I wanted to add some more nutrients, some more fiber, some more texture. There's sugar in here. There is salt, baking soda, and baking powder. And I've got my spice blend. This has got cinnamon, cloves, allspice, nutmeg. You can use whatever blend you like, but this is so yummy and warm and just right for the autumn. First, you want to get all your dry ingredients in a bowl, get to know each other. Mix them up. Same way I do most of my baking. Dry ingredients get mixed in with dry ingredients. Now we move on to the wet ingredients to get them all together. You don't have to beat it too much. What I love about this recipe is you don't need a mixing machine. You don't need a big old KitchenAid. Just using your guns. Mix in. Wow. That is like coconut cream. Pumpkin. So now you get all of your wet ingredients happy and creamy and homogeneous. Now, dry ingredients. And again, like even with working with regular flour, you don't want to overblend, overmix, overwork the batter. You just mix it just until it's incorporated. Oh, it smells good already. The cinnamon and the allspice and the cloves. So once the batter has come together, you can add your inclusions. That's a fancy word for nuts or chocolate chips or raisins, whatever you love, you can add right now. I do not have a nut allergy, so I am adding pecans. I've got my oven preheated at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm gonna grease my pans. Since I'm making this vegan, I'm gonna use an avocado oil. Usually I would use a little butter, but you know, making it vegan. And also, I'm gonna make muffins. This batter will make one big loaf or 6 muffins and 2 little loaves. So one of the biggest challenges with gluten-free baking is getting the consistency and texture right, because gluten is this very stretchy protein. It's kind of like my hair. It has spring to it and it has give, but without the gluten, sometimes the proteins break and the air bubbles that you want staying in the loaf get popped out of the loaf. So there's challenges.
Have you had disasters in your process?
Oh my, oh my. I have experimented I love rye bread, and so I make a dark rye bread, but rye has gluten in it, so you can't use that in a gluten-free diet. So I decided, let me swap out the rye with buckwheat, and I made a buckwheat doorstop. So yeah, I gotta try this again. It's tasty, but it's hard as a rock. Going into a 350-degree oven. The muffins are gonna take about 25 minutes. The loaves are, whoops, that was my thermometer. The loaves are going to take about 35 minutes. The muffins ended up taking an extra 5 minutes, so 30 minutes for the muffins. Out to cool. We're gonna let these bake a little longer. They smell so good, and they puffed up because of the baking soda and the baking powder and a little bit of cider vinegar that helps everything poof. And the eggs probably helped a little too. Look at those gorgeous little loaves. Oh my gosh, they're so sweet. The loaves took about 45 minutes to bake. They're still too hot to tear into, but these are nice and cool. So let's give it a taste. Look at that. They look like a regular muffin. You know, just because you're gluten-free doesn't mean you have to deprive yourself. Wow. Cinnamony, allspicy, pecan-y, you know, and now that they're not vegan, I think what would be really is some cream cheese frosting.
Micromanja, courageous cooking in a craft kitchen.